a Tuesday afternoon meeting of Budget and Finance. And we'll start with the resolutions. The first resolution up, Resolution RS 2017-517, requests the Metro Development and Housing Agency to update and revise its official tax increment financing development priorities for the downtown core, including the Art Center, Capitol Mall, Phillips Jackson, and Rutledge Hill redevelopment districts. Is there a motion? Motion and second, and discussion. Councilman Glover.
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, Mr. Jameson, what does this resolution actually require of MDHA to do, please, sir?
Well, MDHA is granted near autonomous authority by state legislation. So we are submitting this by resolution because it's more lines of a recommendation to MDHA, not a mandate. It would nevertheless be up to them to determine whether or not they want to alter their current development priorities to prioritize green space and public space in their development plans.
Okay, I think that answered the question. So it's not something mandatory they'll have to do for us. It's just something we're requesting.
Correct, and we can't.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Seeing no one else in the queue, and there having been a motion made and seconded, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? 517 passes. Then Resolution 2017-555 approves an Enhancing Savings Outcomes for Financial Counseling Grant from the Cities for Financial Empowerment Fund, Incorporated, to the Financial Empowerment Center to pilot a new set of savings milestones and outcomes and assess the results. Is there a motion? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing no one in the queue, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? 555 passes. Resolution RS 2017-556 approves an amendment to a grant between the Oasis Center, Incorporated, and Metro government to provide services that help youth grow, thrive, and create positive change in their lives and in our community. Is there a motion? Motion and second. Seeing no one in the queue for discussion, all in favor say aye. 556 passes. Resolution and is recommended to the council tonight. Resolution RS 2017-557 approves a grant from the State Justice Institute to the Nashville Juvenile Court to provide funding to obtain expert assistance and initiate implementation of any needed changes. Moved and seconded. Seeing no one in the queue, all in favor say aye. 557 is approved and recommended to the council tonight. Resolution RS 2017-558 approves a grant from the U.S. Department of Justice to the Office of Family Safety to fund a high-risk court advocacy services for victims and probation program for offenders. Is there a motion? Moved and seconded, and Council Lady Allen.
Thank you. I just would like an explanation of what the risk is. Is this like danger risk, or is it lack of success risk? Just a little bit of elaboration would be helpful.
The spokesperson for all.
Yes, and we have someone here from the Office of Family Safety. Thank you.
The Office of Family Safety, it's a great question. As you may know, Metro Police, with the support of our office, just rolled out the lethality assessment protocol, where every domestic violence victim is assessed for their level of risk of being murdered by their offender. And this is part of that program. So we've identified which victims are at the highest risk. So what are we going to do about it then? Well, we want a high-risk victim advocate to help address their needs, as well as potentially a high-risk, under this grant, probation officer to have a heightened level of supervision. So hitting the victim safety factor and the offender accountability parts of the equation in terms of high-risk offenders.
Council Lady, any further questions? All right. Thank you. Seeing no one else in the queue, all in favor of 558, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? 558 is recommended to the council this evening. Resolution RS 2017-559 approves the Middle Tennessee ICAC Task Force grant from the State Department of Finance and Administration to the Metro Nashville Police Department to continue funding for the Internet Crimes Against Children Unit. Is there A motion and a second. Seeing no one in the queue, all in favor say aye. All opposed. 559 is recommended to the council tonight. RS 2017-560 approves a grant from the State Emergency Management Agency to the Office of Emergency Management to fund costs related to Homeland Security preparedness. Is there a motion? A motion and a second. Seeing no one in the queue, 560 is approved and recommended to the council tonight. Resolution RS 2017-561 approves an agreement between Metro and Bethel University to provide educational opportunities for Metro government employees. And Councilman, is there a motion? A motion and a second, and Councilman Schulman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a quick question on this, and it's can other universities also, can they seek Metro's approval and also get involved in a program like this?
Yes, and there are several, I believe. I believe MTSU is the largest.
I saw the MTSU one. Are there other ones already involved, and if they're not, they can get involved? Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman. Seeing no one else in the queue, all in favor of 561, please say aye. Opposed? 561 is recommended to the council this evening. Resolution RS 2017-562 approves a grant from Boulevard Bolt Incorporated to the Metro Nashville Social Services Commission to benefit the House Nashville program to aid homelessness. Motion made and seconded, and then Councilman Schulman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to come to this committee and ask questions. Can somebody tell me this money, and I know it's not a lot of money and it's a good thing, but how does it go to benefit the House Nashville program?
Would anybody from the finance department or the administration want to tackle this question?
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to slow this down. If somebody can just get me the information, that would be helpful. I know it's not a lot, and it's for a good reason. I was just curious as to what it went for.
Okay. And to try to have the information before the meeting tonight.
That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then Council Lady Allen.
As a former member of the Homelessness Commission, I'm not speaking officially, but I'll just throw out what I know, which is the House Nashville project typically provides the down payment and a certain amount of beginning furniture, and it usually takes about $1,000 to get a person into a housing situation, and then they have all the wraparound services to make sure that they stay there. And it's been a very successful program, called Housing First, that shows that if you can get people housed, then you can provide the stability they need to then become employed and productive citizens. So. That's an unofficial answer.
Thank you, Council Lady.
I have just reviewed it, and that is funding that's going to be provided just for general operating support of the program. So it would cover administrative costs and things of that nature.
Thank you, Director. Seeing no one else in the queue, all in favor of 561, please say aye. 562, rather. I'm sorry. My correction. 562, please say aye. Thank you, and 562 is recommended to the council this evening. Resolution 2017-563 authorizes Metro to enter into an agreement with the Gladeville Utility District to provide information needed to bill customers for sewage service in Davidson County. Move approval, and a second, and Councilman Glover.
I realize there's not a lot of cost with regards to the 45 cents. I guess we're basically giving it, I'm going to use the word rebate back to Gladeville. Maybe that's an appropriate word. But do we have do we have an idea of what our cost is actually going to be in order to implement this? I realize it's only 96 customers, but what kind of cost are we going to incur? And then what kind of recapture do we think we'll see on that, please?
Thank you, Councilman. I see Mr. Snyder here from the Water Department.
Jim Snyder, Metro Water. Councilman, the cost to Metro is zero. The fee, the 45 cents per meter per month, is based on other agreements that we have with other utilities that are on the fringe of the county where They may have a water customer, and we provide sewer services. And we did an analysis of that fee. Our actual cost is 37 cents per meter per month. And as you'll see, this agreement is over a 10-year period. Looking at a 3% value of money over a 10-year period, normalizing that over that 10-year period, if we pay anything under 46 cents per meter per month, that's fair. But once again, we recapture that money from the customer, so there's no charge to Metro.
Thank you. Any further questions, Councilman? Thank you, Jim. Seeing no one else in the queue, all in favor of 563, please say aye. Opposed? 563 is recommended to the council for this evening. Bills on second reading. Bill number 2017-580 amends the Metro Code authorizing the creation of a downtown central business improvement district and appoints a corporation to act as an advisory board to the district with the necessary powers and authority to carry out the purposes and intent of the district. There is an proposed amendment. I'm going to ask our counsel here to comment on a second that this bill is also amendable on third reading. If you would just clarify, the state process gives a slightly different variation to our normal rules.
The state legislation that establishes business improvement districts has somewhat of an arcane process for approval that doesn't mesh entirely well with the council procedure, but essentially we would have the public hearing on third reading for the bill, not on second. And as stated, the legislation says, at the conclusion of such public hearing, the governing body shall adopt as amended, or reject, suggesting that the amendment could be done on second or third reading. I believe historically it's been done on third, but that is the way the state legislation reads.
All right. Is there a motion? Moved and seconded, and Councilman Glover.
Jameson, come back to, let's talk about, can be amended on third. It has to be amended, but it's to be adopted on third, or do we have the opportunity to defer until we can determine what exactly we may be interested in doing there? What's the procedure we have to follow?
Right, so there are two provisions in the state law. Let me just read the two sentences out of each. 784-513 requires that you have the hearing be held not less than 30 days, nor more than 45 days following the adoption of the initiating resolution by the governing body or the initiating petition, filing it with the clerk. After that, the requirement is, in all municipalities that require 2 or more readings before passage of an ordinance, all readings shall have been held prior to the public hearing. So we have to have the first and second and have the public hearing on third. And then it gets to the last sentence I just read. At the conclusion of that public hearing, you adopt it as stated or as amended. So historically, it's been taken to mean you adopt it on third. It doesn't prohibit you from adopting the amendment on second. That's all I'm saying. So.
Okay, so give me clarification one more time, if you would, please, on the amendment, exactly what it is we're trying to accomplish.
You have an option. This committee can consider the amendment straightforward today. Then tonight, you have the option of not introducing the amendment. You have the option of introducing that amendment on third.
And so, Chair, it's your amendment, is my understanding, right?
There is an amendment, and the amendment is just an option for this committee to consider, which is that the traditional sunsetting provision in the business districts continue, and the bill is written that that there is no sunset provision and that it would be permanently authorized. And so the amendment is just adopting the traditional sunset provision as an option for this committee.
Okay. And then let me ask this question to Mr. Jameson, if I may. What is the responsibility of this organization? Do they fall under the same I guess, guidelines that we as a legislative body do with regards to sunshine and public notice and all of that, records request, et cetera?
The sunshine law, I don't believe, applies to them, but they do I think, have a fairly good track record of being responsive to their constituency. The public notice requirements, because their assessments go through this body, apply, but not to them. It applies to us, and that we announce this ordinance, the revenue change that's anticipated mid-year, any other entity that, or any other action that this body would take with respect to that revenue assessment.
All right, and then my final question, are we better off to go ahead and move the amendment right now to where if there seems to be some additional conversation between now and third reading for the public hearing, that's, I guess some additional massaging may be able to take place? Are we better off to go ahead and do it now? Or are we better off to wait until the public hearing and third reading in order to introduce the amendment?
If you're just asking my personal preference, I'm not commenting on the merits of the amendment, but procedurally, if the amendment were to be approved by this body, I would rest more comfortably if it were done on second, and therefore, what's advertised on third reading is the final amended version for the public's purposes. Is it enough of an amendment that it would alter the persons who would turn out? Is it substantive enough? Probably not, but to remove all doubt, if it were an earlier rather than later amendment, that'd make me feel a little easier.
Then, Chair, I'm going to move your amendment for this bill.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Thank you, Councilman. Council Lady Gilmore.
Mr. Chair, I was going to have you to, if you could, explain your amendment, and then I was going to follow up and make a comment if that's appropriate.
Well, certainly, the amendment is simply to have the traditional sunset provision after 10 years. I believe the CBID legislation was introduced in the 90s, and then it came up for renewal 10 years ago. This is the 10th anniversary of the last renewal, and so it's back before us today. So it's just a question of having the traditional sunset mechanism or not. Again, I think it's an option for the committee and its members to formally consider.
Okay, thank you so much. I sat on the CBID as an ex officio member for 8 years, and I do think that the sunset provision is a very good provision, as the chairman shared. They've had it in the past, and I see no reason to do away with it, and I'll share a couple of things. One is because, as he shared, they do assessments, and the council person for the district would initiate that if the board so chooses to raise those assessments, and I did it a couple of years ago for the GBID. So I do think it's a level of accountability versus just having no sunset provision and it continues on into infinity, and then the owners can choose to do a dissolution if they want to. So I think there is some accountability there, especially since the council member has to sit as an ex officio member. So I see nothing wrong with the sunset provision, especially since it continues to do the same things that it does downtown already, which is provide a safe, clean environment and provide extra security downtown and beautification. So I do think it's a good step because we are closely connected to them, even though they do have an oversight board. So I just wanted to share my support for that after sitting on the Downtown Partnership CBID for 8 years. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Council Lady. Councilman Mendez.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. One question, I guess, for Mr. Jamison, and then a comment. There's a mechanism for the property owners to terminate the district, right? Correct. And that's not changing with this resolution, is it?
It is not.
What can you just remind us of what the mechanism is?
Sure. So the state law that authorizes the creation of business improvement districts also specifies the mechanism for dissolution. And all that is required of this body for the dissolution provision is that you allow it by written petition of either a 50% of all the registered property owners or 75% of the value, the assessed value, owners of 75% of the assessed value of the properties within the CBID. That's all that's required, and that's historically been in the CBIDs. The difference is whether or not to allow it on a set 10-year time clock expiration or not.
And is that those numbers roughly the same as what it took for the property owners to get it renewed this time?
I believe so. They exceeded it by, I see that Mr. Turner's here, they exceeded it by a fairly comfortable margin, I believe, this time.
So thanks. My take is that whether it automatically renews or got to come back every 10 years isn't really a whole heck of a lot of difference, because if we ever reached a point where the property owners lost confidence in the CBID, then they would be able to vote it out of existence just the same way they voted to have it extended now. As I understand it, the property owners in this lead up to this resolution voiced their preference to have it be automatically renewed renewing. And so I think there's adequate protection they can get out of it if they want to. And if that's their preference, I'm inclined to defer to the preference. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman O'Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of thoughts on this. I would like to thank Councilor Gilmore for co-sponsoring this particular piece of legislation with me. I would encourage the members of the Budget and Finance Committee to pass the bill as filed, unamended with no deferrals. This is something that I will state to this committee we spent, and including me personally, months on, and the outreach necessary for this 10-year renewal period, thinking back to downtown of 10 years ago, was a fairly Herculean task for property owners, both residential and commercial, for the staff of the Nashville Downtown Partnership, for me personally, for the other ex officio members, including State Representative Bill Beck and State Senator Thelma Harper. And I checked in again today with the president of the Urban Residents Association, who indicated strong support of the CBID as presented, as originally filed, without any amendments. I think there is a general comfort, as Mr. Jamison suggested, if I had the full stack of petitions of those property owners present, I would do it. I would also comment that this is, I'm unfortunately starting to lose track of the number of times that our chairman of this committee has taken a stance on a matter that only impacts District 19 for reasons that I am having a difficult time determining. This is something that I would expect to alarm other district council members, where we are all very in tune with the preferences of our district, and I would hope that we find a better path forward for matters of disclosure. If we took every single option for every single bill, we would have thousands of options to consider. So I think it's very disingenuous for the chairman to state that this is just an option to consider, and I strongly encourage this committee to pass the bill as filed unamended. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Listening to every word. Councilman Allen. Give me one. Sorry. There we are.
Thank you. Two questions. One, just in general, I think of the sunset provision as something that we use when we're trying out something new and untested to see if it works. And it seems like this has been through that process now, and it appears that the owners have endorsed it as something that works. So while I understand reasons for giving lots of options to deal with that, it seems to me that it has served its purpose and may not necessarily be needed, since there is a dissolution process. And then secondly, I would ask if maybe Mr. Turner could address the council and just speak to the process that they went through in coming up with where they've what was originally presented.
Thank you, Councilman. Mr. Turner. Give me a moment. This is.
There we go.
There we are.
All right.
It worked.
All right, thank you very much. The property owners began the process of reestablishment early in 2016. The process involved 12 separate property owner workshops where all the property owners were invited. Through the workshop process, a steering committee, a self-formed steering committee, any one of the property owners could participate in that committee, and that numbered about 40. And the taking all the input from the property owners that attended those meetings and then the steering committee meetings, they determined that the most appropriate course for them was to move forward with a reestablishment that slightly expanded the boundaries, expanded the budget. And as they went through the process, they determined that their purposes were best suited by not having a sunset clause. Having been through it 3 times before, and the intensive amount of work that goes into the reestablishment, they felt that it was more appropriate for their time and others' time to be spent on carrying out the work that's contemplated under the improvement district. And I think that that when you have an overwhelming number of property owners that have supported this, 89% of the value and 55% of the owners actually signed a petition to request this from the council. And that's not of those that actually vote, that's of those that are eligible to vote. So 55% representing 89% of the value. I think that process is what they wanted to bring forward to you, and that's what they've done.
Thank you. Councilman Pulley.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. One of the downsides to going at the last of the line is I don't get to impress you guys with how smart I am by making all the points that you guys have already made. But what I would add is that, I think the points have been sufficiently made about the accountability measures that are already in place here. And I would definitely support my colleague from District 19. And one other point is that we can certainly send the message to them that we don't need to really add any more levels of government regulation than we already have. Just let them do their own thing here and not file this amendment for additional accountability with a sunset provision, because I believe it's not necessary. So I intend to vote against the amendment.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Also, don't want to beat the dead horse, but I agree with Councilmember Pulley and O'Connell on what's been said there. I think we can trust sort of the Improvement District owners as well as Councilman O'Connell that they've worked really hard on this. I think it's time to let the sunset go. And then Councilor Allen stole my point about sunset provisions. We've done it for things like urban chickens and stuff that's kind of out there, something a little risque that you want to bring back after a couple of years. But I think this is extremely well established and maybe time to let that go. So I also plan to vote against the amendment and hope you'll do the same. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilman Pridemore. 1 second. Here, does that work? Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to allow, I don't normally call on my colleagues person by name, but Councilman Pulley, I want to thank him by proving that he is not the last one in the queue and that he did cover some of the questions that I was going to ask. So, but I do stand in support of his statement and in Councilman O'Connell. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Council Lady Vercher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarity for myself to make sure that I'm understanding. Mr. Jameson, can you go back over the process for this amendment? Councilman Glover, I don't know if his questions was fully answered when he was asking, but in terms of this amendment, approving this amendment, moving it forward so that we can continue to vet this legislation and have a full body dialogue as it relates to this amendment, if my question makes sense.
Sure. No, it does. The state legislation, the way it's drafted, does not perfectly jibe with the way the council office typically takes up ordinances where we have public hearing on second. Under the governing state legislation, you have to have the public hearing on third immediately before your final vote. It then states that you vote on it as originally drafted or as amended, or you reject it. And that has suggested to most that it is typically amended on third. There is no prohibition, however, upon it being amended on second. So you have the option. This committee is considering it now, but you have the option on the floor tonight or on third of the amendment. And I hope that answers your question, but.
Oh, came off. I think you're still on.
It does. I'll support the amendment.
Thank you. Back to Council Lady Gilmore.
Thank you. I was going to ask if Mr. Turner could come back to the podium or to the lectern back there.
Mr. Turner.
Thank you. I had just, I think, 3 quick questions. One is if you could explain to us the process for expanding the boundaries for the CBID. How does that work?
So currently, the process is working with the property owners in any expansion area as a city develops over time. And I'll give you the example. The first improvement district ended at Broadway, and a lot of people along Church and Union thought it was crazy to go all the way to Broadway. But each time it's changed slightly. But we've looked at, with our legal counsel and with others, at how to expand it going forward. And we believe that coming back to the governing body, which is the council, with a majority of any property owners in an expanded area, that could then be included or incorporated into the existing improvement district. So as it's going right now, it's going to Lee Avenue. And if in the future property owners south of Lee were interested and came to this council with a majority, that could be incorporated into the existing legislation.
Okay, so you still would have to come to the council if you want to expand the boundaries, and this wouldn't override this particular legislation?
That's correct. That's correct, right.
Okay. And then my second question is, could you share with us how many CBIDs, because I know you do your work and you'll have this answer, how many CBIDs in the United States still have sunsets and how many don't?
That's a tough question. I can answer for Tennessee.
Okay, because Memphis has one too, right? Does Memphis have?
Memphis does, and so
Okay.
does Knoxville.
Okay.
And neither Memphis or Knoxville have a sunset provision in their legislation.
Okay.
But there are over 1,500 improvement districts in the U.S., and Toronto, which is obviously outside the U.S., has over 100 in the city of Toronto.
And do they have sunsets or no?
I don't know about the Canadian legislation or the
What
rest
about
of
New
the
York
U.S.
City? Because it wasn't ours modeled after New York. Do they have sunset or not?
I don't know about New York. I know California, they do it after 10 years, but they only require a majority of assessed valuation. It's not the number of property owners. So each state is a little bit different. Here we have two hurdles, which is the number of property owners and the value. There are two thresholds we have to meet to establish an improvement district and, of course, bring it to the governing body.
Okay. And then in terms of assessments, would you still be coming before the body when you want to increase the assessments on the property owners?
If there was any change, and we anticipate that change wouldn't always be an increase, I know that's a shock to some, but as the values go up, we, especially like in a reassessment period, we expect that the actual rate would and could drop.
Okay, but if you needed to, would you still come?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. You answered my questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Lady. Council Lady Weiner.
Thank you, Chair. Council members Pridemore and Pulley, I got you. I'm last. So, and our good chair saw to it that that was going to be the case, so thank you for that. Hopefully having the final word, and if not, that's okay too. You know, when something's broken, we fix it. In this case, we have a level of accountability that's pretty strong. We have a district that has jumped the hurdles, that has been comprehensive, that has put the things in place in order to protect itself. And therefore, I think I'm going to support the council member of that district who knows it best. And seeing that all the provisions seem to be in place for a thorough vetting and a comprehensive analysis and process, I am going to support him and not support the amendment today. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Lady. You were the last speaker. And listening to this robust discussion, which I'm grateful for, I would like to withdraw my amendment and move on to the bill at hand. Is there a motion for the bill at hand? Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the bill at hand? Seeing Angie, Council Lady Henderson. Excuse me.
Thank you, Chair. My question was for Mr. Turner, and my question was not on the amendment, it was on the bill itself, so I've waited
ma'am.
to inquire.
Mr. Turner, you're back. Thank you.
Mr. Turner, this is just a question in general as it relates to CBIDs.
Mm-hmm.
You've talked about the process around expansion, but I look to a city like New York where they have multiple CBIDs, like the Flatiron District or other smaller districts.
Yes.
Is there anything with this legislation that precludes, say, 5 years from now, as we have greater density and more kind of established neighborhoods within downtown for folks to break out and have their own district?
No, I don't think there's anything that would preclude that. And as it is right now, there's an improvement district in the Gulch.
Right.
That started, and I've had preliminary conversations with the Green Hills. I believe it's the Green Hills Business Alliance and
It's the Green
Hillsborough-
Hills Action Partners. You
That's
came
the
to
one?
meet with us, but it's now the Alliance for Green Hills.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I apologize for
No
my
worries.
confusion there.
I remember you spoke, and it was very informative.
And the, also with the Hillsborough Village Merchants Association and just discussing it in general. And I think they're very valuable tools for neighborhoods to provide additional services above and beyond what the local government can and is expected to provide.
But internal to downtown, if, you know, south of Broadway or Sobro or other areas over time, there's nothing in the way this is structured that precludes that conversation or
No.
that process.
No, in fact, I think in state law, you can actually have CBIDs that, separate districts that overlap in Tennessee, where some could say that we're interested in more security and one's interested in more landscaping, and that could actually overlap each other, where one was only interested in this and only interested in the other. So they can do a wide variety of things. Actually, the state legislation is very broad. We can actually operate a daycare. We're not in the daycare business, but it's allowed under state legislation.
Good to know. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council Lady. Council Lady Vercher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thought we would have had this conversation tonight, but since we're in committee and your amendment has withdrawn, Mr. Turner. So just for me, I'm going to piggyback off of Councilwoman Henderson's questions. Just give some background also. For these businesses, what would be the process? Well, let me back up. Are all businesses in the downtown district, are they required to be part of CBID?
So the state law says once the boundaries are drawn and the district is established by the governing authority, that all properties that are not tax exempt are included in the district. So obviously governmental is not, and certain nonprofits aren't as well. The one exception is the Industrial Development Board, which is included.
Okay, and can you outline the process? Is there not an opt-out provision for the businesses, or
No.
if they're down there, they're part of it automatically?
Right.
Okay.
They will be receiving the services and assessed at the same level as their neighbors.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Council Lady. Seeing no one else in the queue, the motion made and seconded. All in favor of 580, please say aye. All opposed? 580 is recommended to the council tonight. Bill 2017-581 amends the Metro Code to grant full investigative authority to the Metro Auditor in order to allow for independent audits and reviews of all Metro government departments, boards, and commissions, as well as the performance of contracts by entities that contract with Metro. Moved and seconded. Councilman Glover.
If I could, Chair, I'm going to direct this to the sponsor of the bill. I think Councilman, what you're trying to accomplish is what we've seen in the past when audits were trying to take place. They were getting a roadblock. By passing this, and I'm going to also defer to Mr. Jameson on this, by passing this, does it remove those roadblocks to where if a given department is audited by our internal audit department, that they no longer can I guess, stonewall it or slow walk it because now they have to follow the procedures that this council is asking them to do?
I believe that's the sponsor's intent, as well as to authorize the auditing of contracts with third parties, third entities, the performance of those contracts.
I think this is a good idea. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Council Lady Vercher.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if this is a question for the sponsor or for Mr. Jameson. Is there a timeline for response as it relates to this legislation?
Here's Councilman Schulman, the sponsor himself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And on the last question, I defer to what Mr. Jameson said. On the second question, no, there is no time deadline. This is, basically what happened was when recent events have come up, and I called the Metro auditor and said, okay, can you proceed ahead in terms of doing an audit? He indicated that there was no investigative power, no full authority for him to actually conduct that type of audit. And so after talking to Mr. Jameson, it seemed like this was the proper thing to do to get those powers to that individual. So there is no time frame involved in terms of this bill.
Thank you. Any further questions for the sponsor, Council Lady? Councilman Mendez.
I'd like to move the amendment package.
Motion to move the amendment, and is there a second? There's a second. And then further discussion to Councilman Glover?
Just briefly, before the amendment, I'd like to have a complete explanation to understand the amendment completely. But back to the sponsor on this, Councilman Schulman, when you say there's not a time necessarily, can you go a little far? I mean, when we pass this, define what you're saying to us with regards to there's not necessarily a time limit on it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I believe the question was there a time limit on this bill? Now, maybe the sponsor, the person who asked the question, the council lady may have said, is there a time limit in terms of getting this stuff done? In both cases, there is not. There is no time limit in terms of this bill is not going to go away. This bill, if it passes, becomes code, and what happens is the auditor has full authority to investigate for as long as that code is around. In terms of any type of time limits in terms of doing some type of investigation, I think that may depend on what they're investigating. Some things take longer than others, but there is no time limit in that. I hope that explains the answer to the question.
Councilman. Council Lady Vercher.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to clarify my question. My question is timeliness as it relates to a response for the audit, if I'm clarifying it correctly. Does that make sense, Councilman Schulman? I like the legislation. I would like for it to be a little more meat, a little more teeth on it, so that we don't end up going around in the same circles.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, what I can respond to is that obviously you have an auditor and you also have an audit committee, of which we have 2 members of the council that sit on that kind of oversee that process as well. So this was an attempt to get something in place so that there was the power to investigate and do the research and so forth. You know, if the auditor runs into a problem, the auditor can come back to the audit committee. He can also come back, I think, to this committee and say, I've got a problem. And then it's up to the committee or to the audit committee or this committee or maybe the entire council to actually take some further actions. I think the idea was to get this thing started, give the auditor full investigative power, let them proceed ahead, and then if we need to come back behind it and add some meat or some teeth to this because it's not working, then we can do it. But I'm always welcome to other suggestions to make this thing better.
Thank you, Councilman. Council Lady Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to the sponsor, if I may. At whose request does the auditor enter into an investigation? Does that have to first be approved by the audit committee? Is that the request of the Budget and Finance Committee? Is that structure currently established, or does this give the auditor the authority to just kind of like, hey, I'm going to check this out and investigate this? I guess I recall we received an email, and I don't know if perhaps all Metro employees received it, but was that from the auditor to inquire if there were any processes or otherwise that we felt needed review? I think I remember. I mean, is that typically the auditor sends an annual email to request? I just, whether the sponsor, Mr. Schulman, or Mr. Jameson, I would feel better about supporting this bill if I understood the process as it is currently and at whose request the auditor engages in an investigation. Thank you.
So do you want me to start? I'll start, and then Mr. Jameson can finish. So on the latter question, Council Lady, I'm not sure if the auditor sends out a regular newsletter or an annual letter to everybody and says, is there something wrong? The way this is supposed to work is that the auditor works in conjunction with the audit committee. So the audit committee actually determines what things should be audited or not. All this bill is doing is giving the auditor the power to, once that committee approval is given, to go full forth and investigate and review those things that he has to look at.
And that's correct. The auditor acts at the request and with the approval of the audit committee. He doesn't go off willy-nilly, as you might say, and select a target and proceed.
And I did not mean to imply that he or she would or would, but I guess how does a matter that needs to be audited come to the attention of the audit committee? How does that committee request matters?
So, Mr. Chairman, what I'll try to do is answer it with the reason I'm bringing this bill and what I ran into. Recent events, particularly involving Autumn Hills, was the thing that got me stuck. I ended up with information that was being given to me that I was in possession of, and I wasn't sure where to turn it or give it to. And so, that's when I started with Mr. Jamison and said, okay, where's the process? What is the process in place to take information that I was in possession of, to turn it over to somebody who did have full investigative powers to go take this information and do something with? When I ended up talking to the Metropolitan Auditor, he told me that he really, the audit committee would be involved in an audit, but he didn't really have full investigative powers within the code, which meant that we could give him this information, we could give it to the audit committee, and then did he have full investigative authority or not? So the idea was we need somebody who can give this information to, whether it's a councilman, whether it's departments, whether it's individuals, whatever, who can give it to the right place and know that it's going to be reviewed properly and then investigated if that's what they decide to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Lady. Councilman Pridemore.
I have a couple questions, but my colleague is dying to speak, so I think he may answer them for me. So go ahead, Councilman Mendez.
We can come back to you, Councilman. Councilman Mendez.
Thank you. So as one of the two council people that are on the audit committee, I think I can shed a little light on some of the questions. This audit committee, the Metro Audit Committee, and I've been on other government and non-government audit committees, operates like a lot of audit committees do. There is a charter for the audit committee and an annual audit plan. And the audit plan takes into account all the sorts of things that you might imagine and looks at a multi-year rotating basis that we look at issues. Things where it would be, for example, easy to steal cash get audited more or less every year. Where property could go missing, they get audited every year. And other things where there's less risk to the organization and as Metro get audited less frequently, but still on a rotating basis. Every year, the audit plan that's approved by the audit committee leaves open a certain number of budgeted hours for projects that come up through the course of the year, like recently with Knowles. And when the Metro auditor gets a request, and there is no, like anybody can make the request, any employee, council person, the mayor, anybody gets a request, the Metro auditor will reach out to the committee between meetings and say there's been a request to look at issue X, reply to me individually if you think that we should pursue it. And assuming he gets an affirmative on that he'll begin the investigation and give us an update by the time we get to the next audit committee meeting. If y'all are interested, and it is riveting, you can come next Tuesday at 4 o'clock. We'll be having the next audit committee meeting. The other thing that I wanted to comment on is the issue about putting more teeth into it. I think that would be really hard. There's such a wide difference in the sort of issues. There might be a specific complaint about one employee that might not be being careful with cash, and that sort of thing might take a couple days to investigate, and other issues might take months to look at. And so I think putting a specific response time in general is probably not helpful, because I think it depends on what the issue is. And then the last question I heard out there was the purpose of the amendment. And the purpose of the amendment is really to address the issue that there are a couple of agencies inside Metro that have some degree of autonomy, whether it's MDHA or the Airport Authority or NES. And by adding the phrase to the extent permitted by the Metropolitan Charter in the amendment, it's designed to make sure that the auditor has the full amount of authority that is allowed by the charter for every organization in Metro. And I think that was it.
Thank you. Councilman Pridemore, I know you yielded your time to Councilman Mendez.
Just one quick question concerning the auditors. I mean, it's reporting back to the Budget and Finance Committee. So are we saying that this audit is strictly related to financial issues? I'll ask that to the sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good question. I don't think it's related just strictly to financial. It can be anything. With Autumn Hills, it's both performance and financial. Again, all we're simply trying to do is, I'll go back to the councilman at large sitting to my left, who was talking about meat and teeth. This is just trying to provide some meat and teeth to the auditor to make sure that when we, whoever it is, ask the auditor to conduct a review, an audit of a situation, that they actually have the authority in the code to actually do it. So it's not just a budget thing. It could be almost anything. Again, I go back to Autumn Hills. It's both performance and financial.
With that response, my question is, an audit committee or an auditor is not a all-around expertise of every issue that may surface within a department. Why would they be investigating something that they have no expertise in, but yet an issue has been brought to their attention, and we're asking them to investigate for whatever reason, for any issue that an audit committee or an auditor is not their normal day-to-day operations. I'm just saying, if we want to put teeth into their responsibility, make sure they're equipped to handle that responsibility.
Thank you, Councilman. You want to?
And Mr. Chairman, another good question. I think it's one of those things where I think we have to get started. We have to find, I mean, at this point, again, what I'll tell you is that I don't think we want to be floating around with individuals like me, in this case, with information and trying to figure out the right person to give it to let a review, an audit go forward. So at this point, the independent metropolitan auditor seems to be the right person to give this information to. Otherwise, we don't have a process in place. It can just be given to different entities, and who knows where it goes. So the idea is to give it to one person. If the auditor comes back after reviewing, if this bill were to pass and reviews and says, I need additional help, I don't have the expertise in this particular area, but somebody has to be, I believe, within government, an independent source that you can give information to and say, please review because we're not sure. Somebody has to look at this information, determine what to do with it.
Thank you, Councilman. Just going down the board here, making sure, Councilman Mendez, do you have anything further you'd like to say?
There was just one thing briefly on this idea of expertise. This is something that happens with the audit committee with some frequency. For example, the Metropolitan Auditor looks at cybersecurity for Metro, which is obviously a very complex niche area. And when areas of additional expertise are needed, the auditor has resources to be able to get the extra help. So things like cybersecurity, for example, is something where outside help is gotten to make sure that we can do the job of making sure that we're auditing Metro properly.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman. I see also Council Lady Henderson. I wanted to make sure you're all set, and then Councilman Glover. A second. Here we are.
Thank you, Chair. I think briefly, I mean, our auditor is here. I think maybe if we could hear from him, if you don't mind, Chair, for him to kind of give us his take upon this legislation, and if in fact he feels like it does strengthen him with regards to what he has to do. I do know, I served 4 years on this committee, and I do know that anytime we went outside of the scope of our expertise with regards to this, we actually brought in outside auditors to do particular jobs. So if I could, I'd just like to have him answer the questions and perhaps give a brief overview of the process.
Thank you, Councilman. Mr. Swan, I see you're here. Thank you.
Yes, I'm Mark Swan, the Metropolitan Auditor. This legislation helps in the sense that in the original charter language, it didn't really address access to records. So this helps by saying when you have someone challenging what authority you have, all we had were the audit committee bylaws, which said we should have access to all records and documentation. This gives more teeth to that. So that's that area. The other area is that in the original charter, we are just to provide audit assurance services and other audit services. Well, other audit services is very wide open to what that is, but investigations is considered not to be an audit. It's really, it doesn't provide assurance, it provides fact-finding and gathering process. And so we do sponsor a hotline, fraud, waste, and abuse hotline, and in the past what we do is pass that on to a department head and a department and offer our services to help them investigate, or they could do it on their own. On occasion, we've had department heads being accused. In those cases, we have to go to a board if there's a board member or someone else. You know, it would be very rare that any time I think the Metropolitan Auditor would initiate an investigation. We always like to have someone else sponsor that and have a non-audit service agreement with that person on what's going to be accomplished. We hadn't, since this hasn't passed, we haven't got specific procedures, but most likely our procedure would be with the audit committee to have them approve any investigation and have that authority. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Mr. Swan. Mr. Glover? All set. Seeing no one else in the queue after this robust discussion, the amendment, I believe, was made a motion and seconded. A vote on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Then we've moved on to the Bill 581 itself. Seeing no one in the queue for discussion, all in favor of 581, please say aye. Opposed. The committee recommends 581 to the council this evening. Bill 2017-582 amends the Metro Code regarding sales of public property. So moved and seconded. Seeing no one in the queue, all in favor of 582, please say aye. Opposed, 582 is recommended to the council this evening. 2017-583 amends the Metro Code regarding dedication of a portion of transient occupancy privilege taxes generated by short-term rental properties to the Barnes Fund for Affordable Housing. Is there a motion? A motion and a second. Seeing no requests in the queue, all in favor of 583, please say aye. 583 passes and is recommended to the council. Bill 2017-587 amends the Metro Code to exempt owners of stolen vehicles from towing fees for recovered stolen vehicles. Is there a motion? Motion made and seconded, and we have a lot of speakers. Oh, sorry, Council A. Councilman Pulley? See, we've overwhelmed. Here we are, Councilman Pulley. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a couple of questions here.
Okay. I'm sorry, there's, I guess, a point of order here for the moment. The sponsor is here with us and is making a motion to defer the bill. There's so many speakers, I don't know that I can recognize. There we are. To make a motion to defer the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thought this was a really good idea, and as we've gone through this, we've seen that there could be some potentially unintended consequences on certain haulers and the like. So, at this time, I would like to defer it, make a motion to defer indefinitely.
Make a motion to defer indefinitely. And motion seconded. All in favor of the sponsor's move to indefinitely defer, say aye.
Thank you.
The bill is indefinitely deferred. Bill 2017-589 authorizes the Industrial Development Board of Metro to accept payments in lieu of ad valorem taxes with respect to the Opryland Hotel and Convention Center to extend the period for allocating certain hotel taxes to the funding of the cost of flood-related repairs and renovations to the Grand Ole Opry House, and to accept the donation of 2 parcels of property for use in the Metro government's public park system. Is there a motion? Moved and seconded. And Councilman Leonardo on this bill. Okay, that was the last bill. Councilman Glover. All right. There.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, if I could just kind of get I've read the analysis. I was at the press conference. My initial feeling is this is an extremely good deal for the city. It will help bring in additional tourist dollars. And so therefore, if we could just get an analysis. My take on it, Mr. Jameson, is that we're not actually giving away anything. We're going to freeze property taxes, and so we're not really giving money away. This actually will let additional dollars flow into the coffers, if I'm reading correctly and if I understand the purpose of this bill and what the intention of it happens to be.
Right, that is the second component of this bill. The second component would freeze the tax rates on these parcels as valued in 2017, and that would extend through 2025, estimated value of $1.6 million per year. There are 2 other provisions of the proposed ordinance, just for a little history. So back in 2007, the Opryland Hotel area is essentially designated by this body as a secondary tourism development zone, or TDZ. At about the same time, the council adds 1% to the hotel occupancy tax, or hot tax, for purposes of funding the convention center downtown. A portion of that tourism development zone proceeds would go to the general fund, and that's at the time designated for what was a planned Opryland expansion back in 2007. The economy took a turn and the expansion was delayed. In the meantime, that portion from the TDZ that was dedicated to the general fund accumulated up to about $1.8 million. Then in 2010, the flood hits, and in order to get Opryland some much-needed assistance, $1.6 million of that $1.8 million is allocated to them for their flood repairs. And in the meantime, the new Tourism Development Zone, or TDZ, hotel occupancy tax revenues that are dedicated for flood repairs are provided through 2025. In the interim, it has been determined that the monies that has generated are insufficient to provide for the ongoing and anticipated flood damages in the future. And in addition, Opryland has incurred additional expenses that were unforeseen at the time. So this would extend the agreement that we had through 2025 an additional 6 years through 2031, and also allow costs to be included that were described as for purposes of preventing future damages and not just repairing old damages. We talked about the second component. The third component would essentially be accepting the 2 parcels on McGavick Pike that would allow Metro Park access to the Cumberland River.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Council Lady Gilmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we could have Mr. Reed to come and speak to us for a second, come to the lectern. All right, thank you. I wanted to hear a little bit more about your 20% minority participation that would be for this project. If you could just speak to that and how you plan to monitor it.
Yeah, sure. First of all, if I may, Colin Reed, I'm Chairman and CEO of Ryman. Been in that role for 15 years. This is my first time in front of the City Council in 15 years, and I want to thank you all for the job you do. Our company, we have something between $1.5 billion and $2 billion invested in Davidson County. We've been spending a lot of money here, and having good governance is important to our company. So in terms of minority participation, We have made the commitment that we will, first of all, let me say, we have chosen a local contractor to do this job, DF Chase, and we have said to them that we want to make sure that we spread the capital through the community, and we have made the commitment that we will, try our level best to get up to 20% minority participation. But we have a lot of plans for our complex out on Briley Parkway. We own probably about 140 of undeveloped acres out there, and we have other big plans in place that we'll be working on here over the next 2 to 3 years. So my point is, if we make the commitment the way we have and don't fulfill it, you won't want to talk to us again. So I think we are going to monitor it, and we will report on it internally and externally as this project is completed.
Thank you. That's great to hear. I want you to know, do you have the mechanisms worked out at this time, or is that something that you have to work out at a later date? Just how do you plan to measure it?
Well, we have a very, very good company of our size. We build big projects. We're building a big one in Denver right now, an $800 million project. We have built a massive project on the banks of the Potomac in Washington, D.C., in Prince George's County, and we had similar commitments there, which we have a very good construction management program in place. So we're able to see how the contracts are bid, to whom they're bid, and the value of those contracts. So we do monitor them and measure them through that process.
And so how often do you do that?
How do you mean, how can we do it?
So do you send like reports out monthly, or do you do quarterly on these are the subcontractors that we're working at in the particular?
I'll let you finish the question, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much it, just to kind of show that these are the numbers for this quarter. Is it, like I said, is it monthly? Is it something you do annually, or is it something that you do at the end of the project? How do you measure those projections?
In Prince George's County, as an example, Bennett Westbrook, by the way, he's head of design and construction for our company. We did that quarterly, I think. Annually. It was annually. It was actually, that project was like a 3.5-year project, but this one hopefully we'll have done in 18 months. So we'll be looking at this every quarter.
Okay, and so I think the project's wonderful, and you have contributed a lot to our city. But I do want to share, and I think I had shared it earlier with someone from the finance office, is that I hope that we do put special mechanisms in place, and so that it's not at the end of the year, and so that we can reach the goals that we want to reach, and that it is a variety of, when we think of minorities, it's not just small business, but it actually is women-owned, it's African-Americans, it's Asians, it's Latinos. So I would be really open to just sitting down and hear more about that process, because I think when we do approve projects like this, and not saying that you're not deserving, you're very deserving, and we appreciate what you do, but just at the end of the day, I think we do want to have credibility with our constituents and how we're measuring that and making sure that we're reaching our goals, because they do hold us accountable for that as we talk about minority participation and what that looks like, and just best practices, and just to make sure as we go along, and that it's not just annually and we see that it was only maybe 2/10 African American participation when we had, in fact, it wanted like 5 or 10%.
Yeah,
or 15 or 20.
I will tell you this, that my board, which I'm chairman of, we have 8 members. We have 2 minorities, 1 African American, 1 Indian. We have 2 females on our board. We're in the process of recruiting right now 1 new board member. We have a slate of 4. We're looking at 3 minorities. It's an issue that our board and our shareholders embrace, and so this is not lip service. It's something we put into practice. As an example, our company was one of the first major contributors to the African American Museum here in town that has been sort of on the drawing boards here for 5 years. We started committing to that. We made a commitment of $500,000 back 5 years ago, and we funded 3/4 of that by now. And so it's something that we believe in.
Okay, good. That's good to hear. And maybe if you have some type of outreach plan, I'm sure you probably already do, just maybe to touch up on those particular businesses that may not have access to it or may not know about, or just how to get in touch with or how to be a vendor or a contractor for this particular project?
Yeah, a construction company has done projects like this before, and they have internal processes of outreach. So I promise you, we'll do a good job on that.
Okay, and I look forward to hearing some kind of update. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Councilman Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Figured maybe we'd have more speakers. I just wanted to throw in a quick, really excited about this. I don't think Ryman Hospitality is asking for too much. I think Matt and his staff have worked out a good deal here, especially with primarily it being just sort of a pause after the reappraisal, and they're willing to accept the reappraisal tax amounts. Yeah, we've certainly done a lot more extensive investments out there, and I think this is a really solid one, and plan to support it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Bedney.
Just checking. This is not a comment so much about this particular deal, but I wanted to ask the chair to invite Mr. Wilshire to come to the committee and get feedback from the council on what issues are important to the committee. That way we can help him, and I think he does a good job talking to us, but if we have a brainstorming session where people can share with him things ahead of him working out the deals with the different people interested in investing in Nashville, that might be a way to be proactive about it. So it's mostly a comment to you. Okay. Personally, I would like to see, as we work with hotels, for them to dedicate some affordable housing in the hotels or within the property or close to the property to accommodate the workers that work on those hotels, which usually are low-wage workers that have a hard time living in the day. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councilman. So you would like to volunteer to be part of a working group to work with Mr. Wilshire on our incentives policy? Well, I was hoping you're so great that you could take care of it. Consider yourself volunteered. Thanks. Councilman Leonardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for Mr. Reed, Senior. You guys are doing a great job out there at Opryland, and I was just out there a couple weeks ago. It still looks as nice as it did when it was built, and I think this is definitely something that's needed for you guys' business model. But the way I understand it is that, it's for the residents of the hotel, and as Council Lady Gilmore stated, we have to have accountability to our constituents, and I know that my constituents will drive by on Briley and see it, but they're not going to be able to afford to stay at the hotel. So I didn't know if there was any discussions about maybe a day or two a year having it open for the community or anything of that nature. That would help me.
Yeah, sure. So if I may, I'm concerned about time here, but let me just explain why we're doing this, why we're building both an indoor component and an outdoor component. And this really, truly will be the first luxury water park of its kind in the United States of America. There isn't, what we're going to do is not available. You may see things like Great Wolf and the wilderness at the Smokies, but this is a water park on steroids. This is a fabulous, fabulous place. And the reason we're doing it is for two reasons. First of all, you guys, if you sort of go back 10 years and look at the folks that walked up and down Broadway and go look at them today, they're vastly different. This town is transforming in terms of the customer base. And the reason for this is that consumers from all over the planet are discovering the product of this town, music. And they're wanting to come here and spend extended periods of time. The consumer of 10 years ago would come and spend 24 hours at best. Now folks are coming in wanting to spend 3, 4, 5, 6 days. And they want something that is more than just beer and music. They want other entertainment options. The other thing is this. What we're trying to do as a company is attract a different convention business than we have today. Our convention hotel out there does 2x what the convention center downtown does. We do about 1 million convention customers occupancy-wise in that facility. But we see there's a big opportunity for the family-based convention, for these customers who came. I was talking to Councilman Syracuse earlier today about last week we had the Wild Turkey Federation in town. The hotel was sold for 3 days. These guys would love to bring their families and spend an extra 2 days, 3 days at the facility. So we're doing this to do something that is not available in this town today. We have a great water park here called Nashville Shores. I've spent time with the chief executive of the company that owns that business. They don't like the idea of us opening this up to the public because they believe they have a first-class, wonderful, to be expanded further water park. So what we're trying to do is induce new demand into the city of Nashville that will bring new overnight residents that will stay here longer, spend more money in this town, and generate more tax dollars for the city of Nashville. That's what we're up to. And I really think a one-day opening it up is going to be very impractical and very difficult because they'll come for a day and say, why can't I come for tomorrow? And it's, you know, this is really to try. The same as what we're doing on Broadway with Old Red, this thing with Blake Shelton. It's to try and create something that's a little different to what is in town today, to induce new demand.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Schulman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This may be a question for Mr. Jameson or maybe Mr. Cooper. I guess I haven't seen the actual agreement, but one of the questions would be, obviously, this is a locking down of a reappraisal of the property in 2017. And it's my understanding, if I have this right, that when they lock down the valuation of the property, it's for 8 years until 2025. If somewhere along the way the council, the mayor and the council decided to raise tax rates, are they locked? They're locked in at the 2017 appraisal rate and at the tax rate in 2017. Is that right? So if everybody else, if the rest of us get an increase in the tax rate, they don't pay any more taxes. They are frozen in at 2017 rates. Is that right? Until 2025. Okay, so I guess my question is, we're locking in at 2017. This is an expansion project. What happens if they decide not to proceed? Is the agreement set so that, I know we're locking in at 2017, if in 2018 they start working on it, decide not to do it anymore, what happens? I think you probably need to say it into the microphone if you don't mind, Mr. Wilshire.
They are required to have substantial completion of the property by September 30th of, it's either 18 or 19. I think it's 19, but yeah, September 30th of 19.
Okay, so if they don't have it by then, do they?
If it's not completed, the deal is null and void.
Okay, do they have to go back and pay what they should have paid?
Well, I mean, practically speaking, so they're going to be reassessed, right, for calendar year 17. They're going to pay regular rate for 17. The improvement wouldn't come on, I guess, in calendar year and therefore tax year 18, to the extent that there was other valuation. And just to be clear, if they make other improvements to the property, those other improvements they do pay increased taxes on, just to be clear on that. But in tax year 18, to the extent that there was a different rate, no, they wouldn't. It's not retroactive that they go back and pay for that year.
Okay. So, okay, so again, if the water park is not substantially completed, and you said 2019?
Correct, September 30th of 19.
Then the whole deal is off, right? Okay, so so then my second question would be, what happens, I know this is a little different than what we normally do, because obviously this is The total amount of the abatement is in the neighborhood of about $13 million. Is that right, over the period of time?
I feel a need to caveat in all of these conversations, we don't know what this component of the property will be valued at. We don't know what the tax rate will be. And so these are, I mean, you can do math that says they're spending $90 million. Our experience in the past has been that the assessor typically values property at 80% of construction cost.
Okay.
So you could do math that says if it's 80% of construction cost, if the tax rate stays the same based upon, you know, what we think the tax rate will be, then it would be X value. But yes, I mean, that's a lot of caveats to say yes in that ballpark.
All right, so the question to me would be, I know this is a little different because they're going to build something, it's for the hotel guest, it's not for the citizens of Nashville because they can't use it. The question would be, what happens when, if we were to pass this, what happens when the Music City Sheraton comes to us and says, well, wait a minute, you just did something for them. We want to build a spectacular pool and slide. We want the same thing. What happens?
I mean, I can't speak to a hypothetical specifically, but what I can say is that the administration evaluates each and every deal on a case-by-case basis. We look to make sure that there's a return to the taxpayers of sort of dollars above and beyond, and there are a variety of criteria that we look at in evaluating each and every deal. And you know, if another entity came forward with a proposal, we would evaluate that one, take a look at it, and then if it was something that the mayor supported, we would bring that to the council for its consideration.
Okay, but I guess the question is, when is it going to stop? Because if the Music City Sheraton can do the exact same thing, they can come up with a plan and they can come up with a report that says they're going to generate additional income and sales tax revenue. And the mayor looks at that and says, looks like the same thing, let's do that. Then what about the downtown Sheraton here? And they want to do the same thing and they can prove it. So at some point, are we establishing a dangerous precedent by doing something that really is just for the hotel guests themselves? And you know, I'm a big fan of Opryland too. This is just something a little unique and different in the sense that we are actually letting a tax abatement go to help fund a project that really most of us will never have the opportunity to utilize, including our constituents.
Sure. So your question was, when does it stop? My answer would be, I hope it never stops. Because it stops when development stops in the city. And as you well know, the Metro budget increased by $121 million last year. About a quarter of that was increased property taxes without a property tax increase. About a quarter of it was from increased sales taxes. About a quarter of it was increased transfer from the state and federal government. About a quarter of that was from increases in user fees, car registrations, and other sorts of things. That the administration believes is because of the significant development activity. And to put that in some context, the last time there was a property tax increase in Nashville, it generated $100 million of incremental revenue. So there was that plus 20% more just from the growth in the city last year. Now that's needed, of course, because there's increased population and increased demand on services. But I think the answer, is for this council to consider each deal. You know, is this appropriate? Is it appropriate given the context and the factors involved in that deal? But in general, I mean, I think we want to continue to encourage companies. I mean, you heard Mr. Reed speak about the development opportunities that Ryman has. Ryman can choose to invest this $90 million in their Denver project, in projects in Texas, in Florida, and anywhere else in the country. We want Ryman and other companies to choose to invest in Nashville because we believe that provides jobs for Nashvillians, provides incremental tax revenues for this city, and helps fund police, parks, schools, and everything else. That's been the philosophy of this administration. To the extent that someone's coming up and saying, hey, we're going to build something anyway, would you just give us some money? The answer to that is absolutely not. We seek to evaluate each deal based on its merits, and, you know, we put that case to this council for its consideration.
All right. Mr. Chairman, just, again, with ebb and flow of the economy, some things are good and some things are bad. I expect at some point that we will have a recession in this country because that's the way it works. So I don't think you can actually say that, I mean, we certainly hope that our growth continues, but I'm not sure if we're going to see that type of sustained growth forever in this city. And at some point, we're going to be looking at things that we gave away and trying to figure out if we gave away too much. And that's the concern. If we establish one precedent, we may be establishing a deep precedent that where we see other people start doing the exact same thing and asking for the exact same type of help. I just think we have to be careful when we look at these things. All right.
Concur completely. Every deal should be carefully considered on its own merit. There's one point that I neglected to mention earlier. The point was Nashvillians aren't able to benefit from this. I mean, I should point out this council has decided, or previous councils have decided to give incentives to other projects to attract them to Nashville, like HCA and Bridgestone, but most Nashvillians don't work for Bridgestone or HCA. That being said, Nashville clearly benefits substantially from the benefits that they bring. And similarly in this project, just because I may not choose to stay for a staycation at the Ryman property, I still believe that I will benefit from the incremental revenue and jobs that will be brought here that will help pay for the school for my two sons who are in middle school in Metro Nashville Public Schools.
Okay, but I mean, and this goes back sort of to Councilman Leonardo's point. I mean, obviously, we all have a responsibility to look out after all our constituents. Most of our constituents don't have the ability to stay at places like this, and they won't be able to utilize this. I understand the argument. It's just one of those things that you worry about. Are we going too far? Are we stretching ourselves too thin? And I just worry about that overall, and that's my point.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Pulley has been in the queue for a while.
Yeah, just a couple of points to take off on that. First of all, Mr. Reed, I want to thank you very much for the explanation that you gave most recently to what this project all entails. I think you've reached out to many of us and you've told us that one-on-one. I think it's very important for other people who might be listening into this to hear that very eloquent explanation about what we've got going on here. And the most important thing is how this does benefit our community. Your point about trying to get people to stay longer. You know, right now they only stay a certain number of days, and these kind of projects are designed to get people to come into Nashville and stay for a longer period of time. And that alone, whether we use the water park or not, I come from a different perspective. I look at how that benefits us. If I don't ever spend a day on one of those slides, we're going to benefit from the economic value of this. And one question I would have for you, Mr. Wilshire, is when we evaluate all of these, don't we do each and every single one of them on the merits, and it's basically a cost to benefit ratio. You look at each individually. We're going to give you this. What are we going to get out of it? And I agree with you. Just keep rolling. The one point I do want to clear up is if somebody comes to you, when you evaluate each and every one of these projects, we use our people to create the economic formula that comes up with the numbers of what we're going to get out of this versus what we're going to give. Is that not correct?
I'm not sure who our people are. I am our people, sadly. So for better or for worse, I'll take the blame or the critique of that. This council has been very judicious in its budgetary allocations to the Department of Economic Development. So it's Audra out of me, but yes.
Well, let me rephrase that then. Are you going to, if the Music City Sheraton comes to you with a spreadsheet full of stuff and and those numbers say one thing about how we're going to benefit you by doing this project, do you take that on its face, or do you vet those numbers?
We vet all of those numbers.
Okay, all right. Well, I just want to throw my support in for this project because from the numbers I've looked at and from the benefit that we're going to get from this project, I think it's a great deal, and I really don't think we're giving them all that much for it, quite frankly. I think we've extended a lot more to others, so I fully support this project and advancing it forward tonight.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Pridemore. One moment, Councilman. There we are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Councilman Pulley got me again. So he did.
There are other speakers.
Thank you. I also, you know, one thing we have discussed on another project on 5th and Broad was one of the advantages was having our visitors wanting to stay more than I think what we called it one more day. It was the basis of the actual project want them to stay one more day past their convention. And that's part of the reason why Fifth and Broad is being developed today. And so this will be another opportunity for that one more day. Also, we're here, we've been discussing the economic impact on, which is a good thing for us and also for Gaylord, but we forget, yes, Nashvillians are getting something in return. They're getting parts of a greenway. They're getting land donated, riverfront land donated to Nashville for the Nashville Greenway. And also with that being donated is one thing that people don't realize, the Corps of Engineers does not give out any more boat ramps permits. And we've got one now if this deal goes through. So just want to bring that to attention. We are, as Nashvillians, receiving something other than economic benefit from this. We're continuing our greenways, and one day we'll be one of the best in the nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councillady Weiner.
See, council members Pridemore and Pulley, I'm behind you again. Takes a strong woman to be behind a strong man. So strong and vibrant businesses diversify their portfolios, and the business of Metro is doing nothing different than that. You know, when I evaluate these deals, the primary metric that I look at is one's return on investment. And this is actually one of the better deals because what we're putting into this, we're getting way more out of it. And although, no, I don't get to swim in their pool, I think that what we as taxpayers are going to get is additional revenues so that maybe our property taxes don't have to go up. Additional revenues for our roads, additional revenues for our infrastructure, for stormwater, for schools, for our police, for our fire, for our codes department. And so based on those things, I think it makes really good sense for us to move this forward because, Mr. Wiltshire, Mr. Reed, I think it's one of the better deals I've seen, and thank you for that.
Thank you, Council Lady. Councilman, back working the list, Councilman Leonardo, hang on a second. We're back, Councilman Leonardo. Okay, working down the list. Council Lady Gilmore.
Mr. Chair, okay, thank you. I just wanted to go back, and I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the donation that Mr. Reed gave to the African American Museum, and I appreciate him taking the leadership and being one of the first, as he shared, to give a sizable donation to the African American Museum to offer up new opportunities and to diversify some of the things that we have in this city, and we know it'll be the first of its type. So I just wanted to publicly thank you for that. I was really caught up in the minority participation piece, but I did want to circle back around and say we definitely appreciate that. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Council Lady. Councilman Glover.
Thank you, Chair. If I could, I'd ask Mr. Reed to come back up because I think the one thing that we're talking about is Nashville getting a benefit out of this. I certainly agree with several of my colleagues on what they've said, but I think another thing that we really need to understand is how many jobs are being created here. The past council voted to keep a relatively large tire company in town because it kept a number of jobs here in town. And I think my question to Mr. Reed is, how many jobs this is going to create, and are they only going to be seasonal, or does he anticipate they being annual jobs? Thank you, Chair.
There are two ways, two phases of this. We have all of our detailed design drawings done. We've spent a lot of money doing all those design drawings. We want to get in the ground here within the space of about 6 weeks. And in construction, we anticipate within this region of the folks that we will employ about 1,250 jobs. And then once this facility is open, remember the way we're doing this, there is about, and this is one of the reasons why this will not be done in a hotel within the downtown region, is 2 acres will be under glass. It'll have the same roof as the Olympic pool in Beijing. So it'll be for 365 days a year. And then we'll do about 2.5, 3 acres outside which will be seasonal. And one of the things that we hope to do is to have the outside part of this completed by June of next year, so we can bring the summer flow of leisure residents, leisure folks into the outside part, and then have the inside part completed by about October, ready for the late 2018, early 19 winter period of time. And if I may, I'm not sure about protocol, Mr. Chairman, but one of the questions about the Music City Sheraton building something like this, there is nothing like this in America. There is nothing remotely like this in the state of Tennessee. And the reason we're able to do it is because it sits next to a 3,000-room hotel. The reason we're able to do this is because of the huge outreach and demand our organization has to bring people here. And the other reason we're able to do this is because we own a lot of acreage. The last big piece of real estate that was sold next to the Baptist Church for 1.5 acres went for $20 million. This will never be built. There's more chance of me climbing Mount Everest than one of these being built in downtown Nashville. Thank you.
All set, Councilman. Councilman Mendez.
I guess all my comments have been covered. I support this. I think the cost-benefit analysis is as good as any incentive deal that's been brought to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Lady Mina Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Although I'm not sitting on the Budget Committee, I just want to throw my support as well. I think, to me, it's a simple math because we are giving tax break, but we are not taking any money out. If Ryman were not to build 80 million or 90 million investment, there's zero. So zero property value increase and is zero tax. So in that sense, we are not losing any money. And of course, my first inclination was, oh wow, what a great, I wish it would be great for community at large was benefit. However, other benefit and vision and contribution to the community by Ryman is larger than only few of the hotel guests can enjoy. But when it's done and ready, it's one of the kind. So I really appreciate their vision and investment and community, a continuous community investment by Ryman. So therefore, I will support this deal.
Thank you, Council Lady. Council Lady Berkeley Allen.
Thank you. Just a couple more questions for Mr. Reed, if he doesn't mind. One question, the 600 jobs, I think is certainly a compelling piece of this. I'd be interested in knowing sort of where on the pay scale those are. I mean, there's certainly a large need for jobs for people that aren't necessarily, college educated. Would that fill that need? And will those be full-time jobs that they're also getting benefits?
Oh, yeah. I could spend 10 minutes talking about the different benefits that people that we employ have, including, I think we're one of the very few organizations in the state of Tennessee with an on-site health clinic that is serviced by Vanderbilt to service our employees and their families. And I was at dinner with Jeff Balzer last week from Vanderbilt, and he was telling me this is one of the success stories that Vanderbilt have, and they would like to think about doing this with us in other places. So the folks that we employ directly to service the consumer will have health benefits, and they will have other things that we give them. We have an on-site physical fitness facility, food. We provide them with meals. We have multiple benefits, and we have a list of things. But also, we create a lot of jobs indirectly because we procure a lot of stuff from the community. We'll buy a lot of food, a lot of booze. There'll be a lot of people that will eat a lot, drink a lot in these places, uniforms, et cetera, et cetera. So good-paying jobs. But I share the deep concern about affordable housing. This is something that the mayor and I have had multiple discussions about, and this is something that I think is a big issue for this community that we have to deal with. Forgive me getting political,
And then
sorry about
one
that.
more totally unrelated question. This is going somewhere on your real estate. I'm guessing that it's in parking areas. Are you losing needed parking, or how will that be addressed?
Well, we have a ton of parking in Opryland. Actually, the parking in Opryland is very, very adequate. But as you come in the Magnolia area, you're coming into Magnolia, on the right-hand side, there's a big parking lot. There's also, you know, the corral. If you know Opryland, you come in, there's a sort of a corral where occasionally we keep horses. It goes back from there and abuts into the hotel. So the access to this facility will be from within, right opposite where WSM is today. That's how it'll work. Have you finished with me? Thank you.
Thank you. All set, Council Lady Allen? Okay. So, seeing no one else in the queue, I want to give everybody an opportunity to push the button, say one more thing. While we have the invaluable presence of Mr. Reed here, he did send out a letter on the Greenways project, and I would just ask him for a moment to comment on the letter that he sent out to the council and the progress of your discussions and evaluations of the Opry Mills Greenway.
Yeah. So in this full spirit of disclosure, we started having conversations about this Greenway. I think it was with Mayor Purcell back about 12 years ago. It's something that our company really likes the idea of, and that was one of the reasons why, when my predecessors did this Opry Mills development and made the fatal mistake of shutting that theme park, they kept that strip all the way along the river. We have been in discussions with the parks area for some time now, and initially the easy part of it is from the General Jackson going, what would that be, south, probably southeast, all the way up to the bridge and then connecting across to the bottoms. That's the easier issue. Where it gets really sticky is the other side of the General Jackson through to the hotel, to the boat landing. And the reason for this is that is where all of the flood remediation power resides there, and there's a big bridge. That's how we get water off that whole complex if we ever get flooded again. And so initially our discussions with Park was from the Jackson southeast, but in conversations with you, Chair, and also members of the Park recently, particularly the chair of the committee, what we have done is written another letter to Tommy to say to him that we will work with them and absolutely figure out a solution to build a greenway from the north side all the way down to the boat landing, so it can connect around that way. It's very complicated. It's going to take some really quality engineering to do this. But the commitment that we have made as a company is we will figure out a solution to this because it's something that we think is a good thing long term.
Thank you. So just to understand this, you all are making a commitment as a company to help make that happen.
We are.
You are. Thank you.
By granting an easement some way through our businesses to connect the boat ramp all the way back to the bridge.
Thank you. Seeing no one else in the queue, there having been a motion and a second, all in favor of 589, please say aye. All opposed? 589 is recommended to the council tonight. Okay, and then we're on to BL 2017-590. Authorizes the acquisition of real property for the purpose of realigning the intersection of Hillsborough Road with Crestmore Road and Glen Echo Road. I see there's a request to defer this for 2 meetings, and the sponsor is here. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I would like to make a motion to defer this 2 meetings with a brief explanation. And I just want to let everybody know what's going on here. Most of you are very familiar with the intersection we're trying to realign, which is the intersection of Crestmore and Hillsborough, and the intersection of Glen Echo and Hillsborough in Green Hills. So currently, the CVS location sits in the way. So we've been involved in these discussions for a little over a year now with trying to acquire that property and put together some kind of a reasonable site plan, and which led us to where we are today. Currently, CVS has presented a very reasonable site plan this past week, and by moving this 2 meetings, we are not kicking the can down the road any at all. We are continuing to advance this project in a way that'll make all parties that'll make this work for all parties. So I would ask that you support deferring this 2 meetings in order that we can continue to advance where we are right now.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor of a 2-meeting deferral, say aye. Aye. The 2-meeting deferral is recommended to the council tonight. Just before we adjourn, I wanted to bring everybody's attention to the quarterly reports, which I think have been handed out, that our wonderful finance department has labored to put together, and to encourage committee members to make suggestions to these reports as to how to make them even more informative and better. And with that, we stand adjourned.